What to expect when you are expecting the end of the world? Well, the world has or is falling apart, and I won't pretend to know exactly what that looks like yet, but I can make a few solid guesses. In almost any shit hits the fan situation event, the power grid going down or staying down is likely going to be the biggest immediate challenge. Adapting to life, surviving without the unlimited electrical power we've all become so dependent on, will be the main catalyst for everything else falling apart. People are going to keep going to work until they can't do so anymore. And that is the thing. As long as the majority of people who have jobs are able to go to them and do those jobs, then we will have something of a functional society. The moment that most jobs can no longer be completed is the moment that our society fails. A long-term grid down situation is going to stop people from going to work. People not going to work means food and supplies do not get produced, delivered, or sold. Within 3 days, people are starting to run out of food and household supplies. Within the first week, serious looting or theft begins. That brings us to the second major challenge you will come up against: other people. Do not worry, we will get back to discussing combating the lack of power many times throughout this book. While lack of electricity may be the initial challenge, it will most likely won't be the thing to kill you. Another person would. Desperate people do desperate things. We all know there are a lot of terrible people in the world who do terrible things every day. Those people won't go away when society and rule of law does. There are also people who might be terrible on the inside but have spent their lives obeying the law for fear of consequences. When society goes away, so do the consequences, and so do these people's inhibitions for terrible acts. Then, of course, there is the everyday people who normally just want to do the right thing, whatever that may be. Normal people with a normal moral compass. The thing is, though, although the first two will obviously cause you issues if you encounter them, the normal people are much more numerous. There's much more of them. That moral compass that keeps them on the straight and narrow will fade quickly when their food and supplies run out. How far would you go to feed your starving child? I would go pretty far. Now, maybe you have some training, some boom boom sticks, some gear, and you think you're hot shit. Well, easy there, Rambo, not so fast. Don't get too cocky. The truth is, you will not be defending your home against 1 to 2 prowlers or burglars. You will be defending against very large groups. They may not be well organized, yet we see time and time again in today's world that displaced people group together. They form herds, or some would say hordes. Look up images of the migrant caravans. That's something like what you'd be defending against. As the cities run low on supplies in the first days after grid down, then the city itself becomes rapidly uninhabitable for most. This means that millions of people are pouring out of every major city all at once in large groups of tens to hundreds of thousands. They may remain relatively peaceful initially, but not long after their pleas for charity go unanswered will they start to take what they need by any means required. I do not think the odds of a successful defense of your castle is possible through force with such large groups. The best defense, perhaps the only defense, is stealth and psychological tricks. We will talk much more about that later on in this book. Another thing to keep in mind is the simple fact that there are plenty of boom boom sticks in these cities. Some people mistakenly think of any major city as some liberal nirvana where there's not a Second Amendment in sight. Some people think the city is full of soft people. Neither could be further from the truth. While some cities do have much stricter gun laws, there are still solid rates of gun ownership and extremely high rates of illegal gun ownership. Cities also have a ton of militarized police hardware that does not vanish when the police do. Either now or former police officers will take that equipment, or somebody else will. Speaking of military equipment, if you think about it, there are a lot more people with military police training in cities than anywhere else. Cities have more veterans, perhaps less per capita, but way more overall individually. I mentioned the large number of illegal boom boom sticks, many of which are automatic or otherwise banned anyways. You will also need to remember the groups that control most of these illegal weapons are gangs and cartels. These groups do not go away. Matter of fact, they will become incredibly powerful overnight. The only thing stopping them now is the police and the rule of law. Once the law goes away, the warlords will rise overnight. My point is, the people coming out of the cities are not to be underestimated, as so many people do. Cockiness will get you killed. The best way to win a fight is to avoid one. In the first few weeks following the collapse, the suburbs and city outskirts will be the first major battlefield. That is not to say the cities are any better off. Yet, because the city burns through its resources quickly, the start to really heavy looting will be focused on the suburbs. We will examine that aspect in depth, but we also want to point out that the country or rural areas will not be in any way safe. I think that living in a rural area in the middle of nowhere will be better. However, all it will do for you is to buy you some time. There may be less people that make it to you, yet those people will be survivors of looting the suburbs. They will have successfully looted hundreds of homes before they got to you, and they will be very well organized and equipped by that point to have made it so far. They will have a ton of experience on offense when looting a home. Meanwhile, you will have next to no experience defending your home from looters. Keep firmly in mind that we are talking about groups potentially in the thousands. So, being able and committed to hiding yourself, your family, and your supplies should be a primary objective going forward. We will talk much more about how to do that. I want to be very clear. I think it is critical that you own boom boom sticks and you know how to defend yourself. However, if you take on these groups of looters head on, you will lose. You need to hide and only fight if found. We will also be speaking much more about how to do so later on in a later section. There will be many more threats and challenges for you going forward in the new world. It is my hope that this book can help you survive those and eventually thrive.